feel like this year we have a lot of things to be excited about because of this rookie class that's coming in. We obviously have a rookie quarterback, but that's been talked about quite a bit. What I really want to focus on is the rest of the rookie class. I really feel like this rookie class could be a strong class, one of the best probably under the Kyle Shanahan regime, as far as how many players can make an impact and possibly be starters or at least rotation players starting even this season. So let's get into it. Second round draft pick, Aaron Banks. A lot of people are excited about this pick, feeling like he could be a starter from day one. How did you feel about this pick when you first saw it, Rich? And diving into the tape, what did you see that either made you excited or not?
So let me preface this by saying that I didn't really do a lot of draft work on anything outside of the quarterbacks because I knew that was going to be the most important position. I just didn't have a lot of time. So I didn't really know who a lot of the guys were until they were picked. I might have heard their name, here and there, watching a game here and there last fall, but I didn't really know the direction they were going to go after that, and didn't really know who Aaron Banks was until I threw on his tape. And I have quite a bit of college tape, so pulling up his stuff was easy. As soon as they announced the pick, I went to the Notre Dame film and started watching him, and I really liked what I saw. He is a guy that excelled in a mostly gap scheme running game, power, counter, duo, things like that, but he really moves well in space, and I think that's what the appeal of him was coming into the 49ers with the zone running game. Now they do run Shanahan does run a fair amount of gap scheme runs. They've kind of been on the uptick the last couple of seasons. So I think the appeal is there for a guy who really just generally moves well.
Now, I know one of the things that people were a little bit surprised when Banks was picked was it's not necessarily the prototypical guy that Shanahan has picked in the past. Obviously, Mike McGlinchey being, the prime aspect. This guy is a lot bigger, comes with a lot of size, known primarily more for the pass game as far as his ability to block in the pass game. And so you feel like he's going to be able to seamlessly transition into the run game, or do you feel like that's going to be a struggle of his?
No, I think he'll be fine. I was watching a little bit of him again last night, and some of the other things I did notice on a second watch of some of his film is that in wide zone scheme, you want the lineman's head to get to the outside shoulder of the blocker, or of not the blocker, I'm sorry, the defender. And oftentimes he can't quite get there. He's got a great lateral first step, or he basically in a wide zone. And excuse me if I'm kind of jumping all over the place in this, but basically in a wide zone, the first step you want angled at the guy you're going to block. So he gets a pretty good first step, whether it's lateral or diagonal at the blocker, because in wide zone they often have to block the guy to their left or right, usually if there's no one head up. And so he does struggle a bit with getting his head to that outside shoulder of the defender. But where he makes up for it is in his power in driving the defender off. I mean, he can wall him off pretty well. He's a big guy, so he can make up for that. So he might struggle with that in the NFL against, interior defensive linemen that are a little bit bigger than he was playing at Notre Dame. But it's something that's easily cleaned up. They're going to get thousands of reps with that first step and getting that head across. So, I think he'll easily clean that up. But it is something to watch for with him. As far as pass.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please finish.
I was going to say, as far as pass blocking, I don't really see a lot of issues there. I think he's pretty strong, and I actually think as well as he moves in the run game, I think passing game is his main strength.
Right. And where do you kind of project him playing on the line? I think right now people are penciling him in to start at right guard. However, in college he was playing left guard, correct?
Yeah, it's easier to go from guard to guard spot than it is tackle to tackle, I think. So I don't really see him moving Tomlinson out of the way for that spot. So I do think he'll probably slot in at right guard. Who else is going to play there? I mean, I don't think there's a lot of competition there. I guess the other option
is run skill. Is a lot. Some people are saying maybe he'd slide in there, but
nah, I don't think he'll I don't think Brunskill's going to beat him out. I mean, I think they'll compete for the spot and maybe alternate, reps or series or quarters or whatever. But I think ultimately it's going to be Aaron Banks.
Now, last season, that right side of the offensive line was a bit of a weakness. It seems like McGlinchey is more focused this offseason. He seems to have gained some weight, which is a good sign. How do you project that right side of the line looking if Aaron Banks does, slot in there? What would be some of their strengths? What would you see some things that maybe needed to be worked on?
Well, for the right side of the offensive line, I think the main issue was the interior. So basically the center and the right guard. I didn't think for as many as bad snaps as McGlinchey had, I don't think he was the primary issue there. I think it was the center, and I think actually the right guard spot gave up more pressures collectively than McGlinchey or Williams did from the tackle spots. So the interior was definitely a weakness last season. As far as Banks, how he kind of fits in there, I mean, he's going to have a veteran with McGlinchey next to him, and an All-Pro center with Alex Mack calling the shots in that line. So I think he's going to fit right in with those two guys, and they're going to be there to pick him up. And I think he's going to, be there to kind of piggyback off of what Mack and McGlinchey do in the run game and the passing game. And he's got two great mentors there right away. So I don't think there's going to be any issue.
And I think something that is good, a good thing for the 49ers, it seems like offensive linemen tend to transition pretty well if they're good, right? So there are people that can just pick up right where they left off in college. And Notre Dame has been one of the better schools of producing offensive linemen. So all of those things are good signs for the 49ers. Do you assume that do you think that there's any way that he can contend with Tomlinson and maybe on that left side, or do you think there's no way Tomlinson gets beat out and switches over to the right?
I don't think there's any way Tomlinson gets beat out. I think he had a really, really solid year last year.
Yeah, and the only reason why I think that, or why I'm asking that, is because I think he's in the last year of his contract, or might be able to be a free agent. So I wonder if maybe they are looking to re-sign Tomlinson, or if they feel like maybe Banks can move into right guard and they could kind of let Tomlinson walk, because he probably is going to probably get some pretty big money for the way he's performed the last few seasons with the 49ers.
I think so too, and I think he's replaceable. I don't know if they want to spend top money for a guard or close to top money for a guard. I think they'd rather spend that on a tackle, which they did. And then they're picking up McGlinchey's fifth year. I think that'd just be a lot of money to tie up in that spot. So I don't know. I mean, it is important, but I think in Shanahan's offense, the tackles and the centers are vastly more important than any other position. So outside of the quarterback, but I don't see them bringing him back necessarily. If they do, great. That'd be great, because he's a guy who's already familiar with the system and things like that. But I think they'll probably look elsewhere, either draft or free agency, for something a little more value.
And if we're slotting in everybody where we think they're going to be, right? So left tackle, left guard, center, Banks at right guard, and McGlinchey at right tackle. How do you see this overall offensive line being compared to last season, and how would you compare it to 2019?
I think they're much better than last season. I don't know that they're probably on the level of 2019. You just had more veterans in 2019. You had Staley, whose replacement you don't often find, but Trent Williams did just fine. Trent Williams is probably a much better tackle at this point. But not, no disrespect to Staley or anything. I love Joe Staley. So I think it's a wash there. I think left guard's the same. Center is definitely an upgrade. Losing Richburg and then Garland was a big issue. You have guys that after Garland it was just kind of a revolving door at center, and that's not ideal. You had Grossu playing there. I think Brunskill took some snaps there. Right. I don't know if I even want to say maybe Justin School did, but I I don't remember. I think there were 4 or 5 guys that ended up playing center in the last season. And after Garland, there was a big drop off. Right guard 2019 was Mike Person. He was really good. So that was, kind of a downgrade last year. That was kind of a revolving door spot too, between McKivitz and Brunskill and whoever else played there. And then obviously right tackle's been the same for 4 years or 3 years at least, going into the 4th year. So, McGlinchey's kind of always been who he is. Hopefully he gets better this season, but a lot of issues last season kind of, I think, magnified his performance because there wasn't really a lot to critique, and people don't really remember how he played in his rookie year. And in 2019, he kind of played the same way to me. So everything else, kind of hid his issues over the last 3 seasons, except for last year. So.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for as far as upside, in the 2019 season, it seemed like the offensive line, we had stability at each position, and the fact that we knew who was going to play at each position. There was no real competition. And I feel like this season is kind of going back to that, where every position's kind of defined with the player that is going to be there. And I think that's a good sign going into training camp. They could work more on cohesion versus working on who's going to play, and I think that's going to overall transition into, better play coming into the regular season. So I like that about what we got going on. So let's